love a bitch, but let a rat keep his wife.
And I just want to add these to your already large stack of photos, which have been previously admitted. And just for the purpose of the record, I will say, Your Honor, I have just handed the witness 24 Yankee, 25 Yankee, 26 Yankee, 28 Yankee, 30 Yankee, 221 Yankee, which have already been previously admitted.
All right, sir.
Yes, sir. Investigator Smith, prior to publishing any photos, I want to ask you a few questions with respect to the photograph. Why do you all take so many photos?
Don't want to miss anything. You don't want to just take one photo and hope it's going to be the perfect photo that you're looking for. It may be blurry. So, and Stuart likes to take a lot of photos, which I think is awesome because I let her take all the photos she wants. You just never know. I mean, just personally, maybe when you just don't know what it's going to come out as. So a lot of times you may take duplicate photos of the same piece of evidence, and you know you're taking it. You look at the photo and it looks okay, but then when you go look at it, it's like, ooh, what are we looking at? So the more photos, the better.
That usually when you're doing the crime scene investigation portion as the investigator, there's a civilian crime scene tech officer with you. Was one accompanying you on the evening of January 10, 2015?
Yes.
And do you recall that person's name?
Crime scene technician Stuart.
And what was crime scene tech Stewart's responsibility with you as you processed that crime scene?
So our crime scene techs are responsible for actually photographing the crime scene in our direction. We work together with marking which pieces of evidence that we want to have collected and photographed. I said I'm pretty hands-on, so a lot of times I'll put the markers down where I feel they're necessary based on the scene. Like I said, they photograph an overall picture of the crime scene before we even start putting any type of evidence markers down. They will actually physically collect the evidence that's there. A lot of times they'll collect it, they'll note it to me, we'll read what it is, we'll note what it is, I'll write it in my crime scene log, and they will make a note of it on the evidence envelope that they collect that evidence into. So we do that from every piece of evidence, and that's how we gather all that information and anything we feel is pertinent.
Is it fair to say that you work in tandem with each other at this time?
Yeah, we're pretty much hooked at the hip when we're out there. At least I am, anyways.
And at the time you were raised on the radio, as you say, do you know whether someone had died at that point?
I don't specifically recall if somebody was officially deceased or they had been or at Grady and not expected to survive, but either one would require a homicide response.
Responded to 330 McDaniel Street, Southwest Atlanta, Georgia, crime scene location on January 10th, 2015. Did you know upon arrival that someone had in fact been shot?
Yes.
The MacGyver trial wrapped up early today. Jurors are actually taking next week off, the holiday. After nearly 3 weeks, the prosecution is getting close to the end of its own witness list. Today, Atlanta Police Detective Darren Smith was on the stand. He was one of the officers to interview Tex MacGyver, who is accused of intentionally shooting and killing his wife, Diane. One of the theories floating around is that MacGyver had his gun out because he was worried about a Black Lives Matter rally as they were driving in their SUV through Midtown.
Did the defendant, during your interview with him on September the 28th, ever tell you that this large number of homeless people brought to mind for him a Black Lives Matter protest?
No, he did not.
Did he mention that term to you in that interview anywhere?
No.
The prosecution also accused Detective Smith of failing to ask key questions when he was interviewing MacGyver, including how much MacGyver had to drink the night of the shooting. Detective Smith also testified he never asked Tex MacGyver whether the gun was cocked when he fired it. Smith said it made no difference because the trigger was pulled. The trial will take again next week off and then will resume April.
Where are we and what's happening here?
Right.
Because we were clearly off our path.
Right.
That's fine. First week.
Okay. And what do you remember after that happening next?
We went through an area I could describe my familiarity with it, but we went through an area I thought that was particularly dangerous.
Remember any landmarks or anything?
It was an underpass.
Okay.
As best it was very dark, but it seemed to me it was. And that's one that has a particularly high population of homeless people.
Okay.
And at least in the daytime. But at night, there was a lot of people there.
Okay.
And I quickly said, this is a big mistake, and we're in a place that we don't belong.
Right.
And of course, here we are in an almost new SUV and 2 women in the front seat.
Right.
And all that. So anyway, they made a couple of turns, and things were not going well. And Diane said, we'll be on Piedmont shortly. And I said, I'd like to, if you don't mind, please hand me my gun.
Right.
And it was in the center console. We've had some break-ins in our office where the only thing they're looking for seems to be a gun. And so in response to that, I had wrapped my gun in a Publix grocery sack. So if you open the console, you had no clue what you're looking at.
Right.
A flashlight and some stuff
Right.
like that. So Diane reaches in, pulls it out, hands it back to me, and by then we may have been on Piedmont. Anyway, I'm relatively satisfied that we're out of that kind of area.
Right.
And I guess I just laid back again and went to sleep.
Okay.
This twilight zone kind of thing.
Right.
Had the weapon in my lap.
Okay. And then what do you remember next happening?
Danny Joe came to a stop, and anyway, I just time to wake up. But she came to a stop, and I was handling the gun. And I realized it was in my lap,
Right.
and it went off.
Okay, so what do you remember after the gun went off? And what did
Fear, shock. I immediately called out. I said, is everybody all right? And Danny Joe said yes. And Diane's head was kind of slanted. She said, I've been shot, or words to that effect.
Okay.
And I immediately put my arms around her and tried to determine how bad it was. And then I made the judgment that Emory was the closest hospital.
The prominent Atlanta attorney, once convicted of murdering his wife, has now pleaded guilty in the case rather than face a new trial. Tex McIver was facing a new trial after his 2018 conviction was reversed in 2022. Fox 5's Angelique Proctor joins us live with the latest. And Angelique, today's guilty plea to lesser charges effectively ends this case.
That is right, Christine. This case is over. Tex McIver pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and reckless conduct, and now his attorneys say he is eligible for parole.
This resolution will allow the greatest number of people to move forward.
The felony murder case against lawyer Tex McIver finally came to a close Friday with a negotiated guilty plea of involuntary manslaughter, reckless conduct, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony.
And that you are knowingly waiving all the rights that you enjoy as a criminal defendant here in Georgia. Is that also correct?
Correct.
All right. Then I'll accept your plea.
The guilty plea ended a long saga that started when businesswoman Diane McIver was shot in the back by her husband Tex as the two rode through Atlanta, driven by family friend Danny Joe Carter back in 2016. In 2018, a jury found McIver guilty of felony murder. His attorneys appealed that decision to the state Supreme Court, arguing the jury was improperly instructed. The High Court agreed, which set the stage for a retrial. McIver's attorneys say they had one goal for the aging defendant.
He's 81 years old now. He needs to get out of Fulton County Jail. Mr. McIver's always taken responsibility for what happened. It wasn't anybody else who did it. It wasn't anybody else's fault.
Prosecutors had 3 witnesses tell the court how much Diane meant to them. McIver was sentenced to 15 years. 8 must be served in prison, and the balance on probation. He will get credit for the 6+ years he has already served.
We think his sentence will be done sometime mid-2025.
He's eligible for parole right now. In fact, the guidelines are that he should be paroled immediately. It takes some time to go through the process.
And McIver's attorneys say that could be a couple of months, but once he is paroled, he will head home and finish the balance of his sentence there on an ankle monitor. We are live in downtown. Angelique Proctor, Fox 5 News.
All right, Angelique, thank you very much. 3 white